Welcome to Ryan Talks Physical Media and Tech, and today we are talking Apple TV and music streaming. Now, when I'm not watching physical media, the Apple TV is my kind of main hub for all my movie streaming. And when I'm not listening to vinyl or CD, the Apple TV is also my main hub for music streaming. And today I want to explore different options with you and talk about my experiences. Now, for me, my TV is connected to a 5.1 system, and I think for most people their TVs are connected to at least a soundbar. So it makes sense that your kind of TV is the hub for your music streaming as well. Obviously, unless you've got dedicated hi-fi speakers in a different room where you listen to your music, or maybe you've got a smart speaker that you just play your music through. But as I say, in this video, I want to look at the Apple TV's capabilities when it comes to playing music. As always, if you are new here and you love all things physical media and tech, please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and join me down in the comments. While this isn't going to be an in-depth battle of the streaming services, there are plenty of videos online on there. I just want to focus on how they perform on the Apple TV when it comes to functionality and, most importantly, sound quality. Now, one big win about the Apple TV when it comes to music streaming is it supports lossless audio at 24-bit 48 kHz per second. It doesn't support anything higher than that. There are some music streaming apps that do. So, for example, Tidal supports higher, but we're going to touch on that in a second. And also how to enable lossless audio streaming on the Apple TV. So let's take a look at the different options you have available when it comes to music streaming on the Apple TV. A lot of this is going to be down to preference, so I'm not telling you which one is, the best. I'm going to tell you my experiences and which ones I think are the best. Now, when I'm out and about on my phone, my go-to music streaming app is Spotify. And the reason for that is I just find their recommendations, their playlists, everything like that is just unmatched. I've discovered loads of new artists through Spotify's recommendation. Their playlists I can use to chuck on in the car and keep it playing without the need to skip any tracks. But how does it perform on the Apple TV? One thing to note about Spotify on the Apple TV, I mentioned that Apple TV supports lossless audio streaming. Spotify does not stream in lossless audio. So if you're looking for a lossless audio experience on the Apple TV, Spotify is not the app for you. I mentioned earlier on that I use Spotify most of the time when I'm out and about on my phone. I have no issues with sound quality. I could probably struggle to tell the difference between Spotify and Apple Music through my AirPods when I'm out and about on my phone or driving along in the car. However, on the Apple TV, I do notice a difference between Spotify and Apple Music when it comes to sound quality. Let's take a little look at the Spotify app, and I'll come back to the differences that I notice in just a second. The Spotify app on Apple TV is really straightforward. Your home screen is populated with lots of recommendations in playlists based on your recent listening habits. So you can see it's Good Evening at the moment, and it's got albums and artists that I've listened to. I can scroll across, jump back in, new music for Friday, recently played. We've got some audiobooks, best of artists, and this just keeps going down. It's quite busy. I personally never sit here scrolling through all of this. Most of the time I know what I want to play, and whether I just use my phone and then Spotify connect across, or I will just go straight to search at the top here, and you can come down here and use the Siri button to say what you're searching for. You can type it in, or as with on the Apple TV, it will say keyboard, and you can just go in and start typing as soon as it recognizes that you are in a search bar. So we've also got your library, where your music and albums, your playlists, albums and artists are saved across your different devices on your Spotify account, and settings, which I have never needed to go into. It's mostly just licensing things that you can read. So, if we search for some music, if I search Nirvana, I've searched Nirvana, so I use the word search, but it still does it. So we can come here to Nirvana, and we can go through popular albums. We've got playlists there, similar artists, and when we choose to play one of these songs, so let's come here and hit play. I've got it on mute because obviously I don't want any copyright issues. When Spotify is playing music, you've often got this big artist picture in the background and the album artwork in the bottom left. We've got our repeat and our shuffle and our skip and everything. But most of the time, as I say, if I play an album on Spotify, I'll do that and just use my phone to control it, because once it's playing on your phone, as I say, you can just use Spotify Connect to pick up and control it on your phone. And if you're playing music on the Apple TV, you can see there it says listening on Apple TV, hopefully if it focuses. So you can go in and it's just automatically connected to the TV. It's playing what's on the TV, and you can, skip, pause like you would, and control your music from your phone on the TV. Now, when it comes to the audio quality on Apple TV, again, this is just my experience. I find Spotify's music streaming doesn't sound that great on Apple TV. Two things I noticed that one, it's usually quite quiet and I have to turn it up quite a bit. And it all seems quite compact. And I'm not an audiophile or an audio engineer here, so I hope the words I'm using make sense. But it doesn't seem that separated. It seems quite muffled together. Now, one problem I did have with my my setup, and I don't know if it'd be the same with you, my receiver is set to direct, which means it just matches whatever signal it's fed into. It's not trying to add extra speakers or anything like that to it. When I play music on Spotify, and use the direct setting, it only plays out my left and right stereo speakers. It does not enable the subwoofer. I actually have to go into my AV receiver and change some settings so it is using both the stereo speakers and the sub. So that is just a weird problem that I've run into. I haven't been able to find it. There isn't any settings that I've been able to change to get it to work. You know, if I'm watching a film and it's in stereo, I don't know, I'm trying to think of any that are in stereo, but you know, TV shows that are in stereo, the subwoofer is active, and that's with direct as well, but Spotify doesn't seem to do that. Probably just a problem with me. If you've encountered it yourself, please let me know in the comments, and if you've got a solution for it, that would be great. So now Spotify's out of the way, let's look at Apple Music, which is the first streaming platform we're going to look at today that supports lossless audio streaming. So let's just take a look at how to activate lossless audio on the Apple TV. So to enable lossless audio on your Apple TV, you're going to need to navigate to Settings, and you're going to have to go down to Apps. And once you are in Apps, come down to Music. And the first thing you are going to do is come down to audio quality and make sure it says lossless. You have two options here. You've got high quality AAC 256 kilobytes per second, and you've got the ALAC codec, which is Apple's lossless codec, at 24-bit 48. The other thing, if you want Dolby Atmos enabled, so there are a lot of tracks on Apple Music that support Atmos. So if you've got an Atmos speaker, you're going to get that separation, or if you've got a surround sound, you're going to get the separation. Have that set to automatic. You can turn it off. There are some tracks that I think Dolby Atmos ruins. I think they sound, it doesn't sound great, particularly with AirPods, but there are many tracks that sound great in Dolby Atmos. So that's kind of down to preference. You can easily flick it on and off. I wish you could do it within the app, but you can at the moment. And I personally turned Soundcheck off. I find having Soundcheck on, it says here that volume will be automatically adjusted so that all the songs play at the same volume. I find that makes all this music much quieter and you have to turn it up, whereas off, I find that all the songs are pretty much the same level anyway, but they are just louder and I don't have to turn them up as loud. As mentioned, I do genuinely notice a difference between Spotify's audio quality and Apple Music audio quality on my setup and on the Apple TV. Now, I have done A and B tests with, non-Atmos tracks, which we're going to come to in a second. So just normal stereo tracks on the Apple Music and normal stereo tracks on Spotify. And the Apple Music just is louder, more dynamic, better separation. It's just hands down completely different and just sounds way better to me. Again, let me know your experience in the comments. If you put my AirPods in and did Apple Music and Spotify on my iPhone, I would struggle to notice the difference. But on Apple TV, there is definitely a difference. Now, the Apple Music app, once again, is straightforward. We have our home screen. Now, the home screen is a little bit different to Spotify. It still goes down and down, and you can sit here scrolling through as much as you want. Again, it's based on your listening habits. So you've got your recently played. We've got some playlists created here. Your new music mix, a playlist that's created for you. Metal, different moods and stuff. But the main difference here is what we have at the top. And I think this is what separates Apple Music from Spotify. So we've got the new tab. It's Friday today, so it's New Music Friday, essentially. So we've got lots of different new albums and singles being dropped. We've also got live radio. The good thing, again, I'm not reviewing the app as such, but Apple Music has lots of different radio stations based on different genres, which is always quite nice. And we've got all our different releases and new music on this tab. Now, big thing here is I used to love sitting and watching music videos back in, you'd have Sky and you'd stick MTV or Kerrang on and just leave it playing. This is quite nice because you've got music videos on here, and I know you can watch music videos on YouTube, but there's no ads here. They're usually really nice quality, and you can have like video playlists. So for example, let's have a rap life video. So it would be a lot of hip hop music videos that would just play as a little playlist, which is quite nice. And Apple also put a lot of live performances up here. Again, really good quality. I haven't watched any for ages, but you know, if we go into like Ed Sheeran here, it's almost like an album, and you can go through the different tracks and watch them on the Apple TV, which is really, really nice. We then have radio, which is dedicated to all those different radio stations I was talking about just a second ago. Library is obviously all your artists and albums. Again, if you use iCloud, your library will sync up really nicely. And we've got Now Playing, which nothing's playing at the moment, and our search, which is very similar to what we had just a moment. Now, when you're playing music on Apple Music, it is a little bit different. So I'll go into the same album I went to just a second ago. You can see we've got a nice little animation on the top left on the album there. And when we go to play it, that animation stays in the middle, which I think is quite cool. And down here we've got a few extra things. So we've got the lyrics if we wanted the lyrics up on the screen as well. We also have, and I'm trying to do this while controlling it, looking at the camera, we also have share play. And what this will allow you to do is anyone that's in your house, they can scan that QR code and then they can like choose what's next on the music. Really useful if you've got people around. Again, if you want the Apple TV to be your home hub for music streaming and you've got a party going on, get people to connect. They can control the music as well and choose what's coming up next. Over here we have info, and this will tell us that we are playing lossless music at the moment. If we were to play an Atmos track, which I will just come back to now. So let's find an Atmos track. So here it says spatial audio with Dolby Atmos. So we're going to this Green Day album. We will click play. You can see it says Atmos at the top there. And if we turn the lyrics off, come over here to info. There we go. It tells us that we are playing a Dolby Atmos track. So really like the Apple Music app. I think it's got a lot of features that the Spotify app doesn't have. And I think overall it's a better app. I also wanted to touch on Amazon Music and Tidal as well, because they are two other streaming services you can get on the Apple TV. So Amazon Music I have used on the Apple TV. It does also support lossless audio. I just don't find the interface that great. I don't currently have a subscription with it. It supports much higher bit rates than the Apple TV can support. So whether it's worth paying for that extra audio quality if you're just using on the Apple TV, you know, I'm not too sure. And I just found the app lacking a little bit. The recommendations in the playlist weren't great, so it wasn't for me personally. And another option is Tidal. Now I used to use Tidal quite often. Tidal supports streaming, I think it's up to 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, so really high quality streaming. But again, the Apple TV doesn't support it. So you're going to need some extra hardware if you're going to get the best out of Tidal. Maybe for another video, but I used to have a DAC connected to my iPad, which I would use Tidal on to get that full, 192 24-bit audio quality. And yeah, it sounded amazing. Did it sound 10 times better than Apple Music? I don't think so. Again, it's going to vary, depend on your setup, but Tidal is another nice option. Tidal has music videos. It has a nice interface. It looks really clean, and I'm a big fan of it, but I just, I don't need a subscription to all of them, but I could fully understand why someone would use Tidal over Apple Music if they weren't sort of fully invested in the Apple ecosystem. Maybe they've just got an Apple TV and an Apple Music subscription. At the time of the recording, there is no dedicated YouTube Music app for the Apple TV. Obviously, the YouTube app has a music section which you can use, but there's no dedicated app. So overall, I think the Apple TV does a great job when it comes to music streaming, particularly if it's kind of the hub of your home theatre setup. If your TV's connected to some decent speakers or a sound bar, it makes sense to make use of it when it comes to music streaming as well. I know a lot of sound bars and things have built-in Bluetooth streaming, but here you get the option of different applications. If you want to use Spotify or Apple Music or Amazon Music or Tidal, you've got all those different options there. And you've obviously got the lossless streaming on some of those apps as well. Now, me personally, I think Apple Music is the way to go on the Apple TV. Maybe it's just because it's part of the ecosystem, but I think Apple Music has the best app and features on Apple TV. You've got music videos if you want to just leave music videos playing. You've got Atmos. Spotify, if this was a review of streaming services in general, it would be quite close between Spotify and Apple Music. But as mentioned earlier, I think Apple Music just sounds much better than Spotify on the Apple TV with my setup anyway. So Apple Music is my recommendation on the Apple TV. As always, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what streaming app you use on the Apple TV. Do you even use the Apple TV for your music streaming services? Do you have any dedicated music streamer recommendations for those that want to go for full lossless audio? Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.